Hello Internet, my name is the Golden Stalfos, and today I'm going to talk about why the argument that the author is dead and therefore we can read whatever we want into their work is not only dumb and wrong, it completely misses the point of literature. Now please understand, I'm not a consequentialist. I'm not here to say that, oh, actually the author knows their world best and blah blah blah. I'm not trying to defend J.K. Rowling's dumbass tweets about how fucking terrible her world building is. That's not what this is. This is a media critic taking aim at other media critics for not understanding how to criticize media. So first and foremost, before I go off and say that y'all don't understand what literature is for, let me explain what literature is for so I can back that claim up later. The purpose of literature, or all media really, is first to be entertaining. If you're not entertained while consuming it, then you will stop consuming it. The second thing is to teach you something. Whether that something is, a moral philosophy or how to fix a car or just, open your mind to new ideas. Maybe it's not even teaching you a direct concept. Maybe it's just exposing you to a new idea. But those are the two main points of literature, to be entertaining and to teach you something. Now, what is the point of the death of the author argument? I can speak. Don't worry about it. Well, the main point is that literary critics have something they want to talk about, and they have a story that they think will be popular to talk about, and they want to mash those two ideas together no matter how little they actually fit. And so they say that the author is dead, and I can read into this book however I want with whatever lens I want. And you can't criticize me for doing that because the author is dead. So if you criticize me for reading my own messages into things that don't have those messages in them, then you're an anti-intellectual. Because I'm an intellectual and you're a dumb shithead, so listen to me. Fucking arrogant pricks. I mean, first of all, I'm completely against the idea that media critics are inherently more intellectual than the people they lecture about media, because, you're not. We're not. We have our own opinions about things, but so do literally everyone in our audience. Get the fuck off your high horse. Also, especially in today's era, you don't need any credentials to be a media critic. I'm just a person on the internet who has consumed a lot of media and tried my hand at making my own a few times and not very successfully. Unsuccessful mostly because I lose interest and stop doing it, but whatever. I don't have executive dysfunction. I don't know what you're talking about. Now, aside from the fact that this line of argumentation is both lazy and arrogant, it's just fundamentally missing the point of the work you're analyzing. Yes, every work can be analyzed through multiple lenses, and yes, most of the lenses that you might initially assume should be applicable are and are equally valid, right? It's fine to talk about the actual plot events, it's fine to talk about the characters, it's fine to talk about the world building or what kind of system exists in this world and how it reflects our current systems. It's fine to talk about how this book does or does not represent certain groups and whether or not that reflects on the real world or on people's opinions of the real world. There are lots and lots of different ways you can talk about any given story, and most of them work for almost every story, but not all of them work for every story. There are lots of right ways to criticize media and to look at media, but there are also some just flat out wrong ways, right? For example, if you were to read Paradise Lost and try to find messages related to socialism or Nazism, those philosophies didn't exist when Paradise Lost was written. In fact, the countries those philosophies were developed in didn't exist when Paradise Lost was written. So obviously, Paradise Lost has nothing to do with any modern philosophies. You could maybe find something in it that supports a modern philosophy if you wanted to, but why? At that point, you're just picking out things that support your pre-existing worldview, regardless of where they come from or why they were put there, which is dumb. Also, for the record, I'm not saying that those two philosophies have anything to do with each other. They obviously don't. They were just two diametrically opposed examples that are both more recent than the book. But not only are you just using whatever work you happen to be looking through to confirm your worldview, you're also missing the point of the work. You're missing the thing that the author was trying to teach you. And you're missing opportunities to analyze the things that are actually there. right? Like authors can put a lot of things into a book subconsciously without thinking about it. And analyzing those things is very interesting and important. It can teach you a lot about the kind of person who wrote the book, the kind of people who consumed the book when it was new, that kind of stuff. And you miss all of that if you just read in whatever the fuck you want to read in, regardless of what's there. And there are lots of interesting things you can read into, stories like Paradise Lost, right? Like, that's a very fascinating book. It's possibly the world's oldest example of self-insert fan fiction, and it's about Satan. There's a lot of philosophical ground to cover there. But if you go into it saying, all right, what can this story tell me about feminism? You're going to miss all of that. Because the story doesn't say shit about feminism because it was written by a rich old white guy 1 billion years ago who was probably super sexist. Like, context. Context matters. The death of the author is a direct rejection of the context in which the work was made. It's a rejection of why the book was made, who made it, what they were thinking about. Like, that context matters. Everything is contextual. Even in a case where the author has been dead for centuries, I don't think it's completely a good idea to just toss out the context of who the author was, what kind of world they lived in, what kind of world they were writing about, why they were writing about it. That context shaped the story, and it can shape your understanding of the story. Tossing that out to just look for whatever you want to find is dumb. Now again, that context isn't the end-all be-all. There are lots of things that are put into stories that are not put there intentionally, and can still be interesting to analyze. Like, for example, J.K. Rowling wrote a series of 7 books for children that were intended to show, good guys do good things and bad guys do bad things. But one, the good guys are just as much dicks as the bad guys, except they aren't called Death Eaters because, Jesus Christ, Rowling, have you ever heard of the word subtlety? Right? Like, the reason Snape is evil is because he bullies people. The reason Malfoy is evil is because he bullies people. The reason Harry is good is because he bullies people. Just the right people who deserve it. Because they bullied him or because they were fat. Right? And it also has this whole, terrible, fucked up system that fundamentally doesn't work, and year after year the villain is in a position of authority over the students every single year, and yet they never think, wow, putting people in positions of authority could lead to people being villains. Or even just, man, maybe we should screen for Death Eaters at this job. Because Rowling is a fucking libertarian, and she doesn't understand that the systems of the world are fundamentally broken. So she just wrote fundamentally broken systems into her world without understanding how broken they are. Sean did an excellent breakdown of this a little while back. But the point is, all of that stuff is stuff that she didn't intend to write. She wanted a very simple story about good versus evil, and the good guys are right and true and just and take over the government. She didn't want to tell a story about a trust fund jock who went to an incredibly exclusive private school and ended up becoming best friends with the prime minister and got to be a cop even though he didn't meet the qualifications for being a cop. Like the physical embodiment of corruption. And so there's room to analyze the shit that she put in there without meaning to. And whether or not she meant to put it in there is irrelevant. It's there. And it very much reveals her shitty worldview and her subconscious biases. But that said, even though these are very long books with lots of stuff in them, there's some stuff that isn't in them. There's some stuff that if you go in looking for it, you just won't find it. Rowling is an all-over-the-place terrible writer who can somehow include slavery in her book about magic children, but not even think of it as a bad thing? Like, what the fuck? But even someone that scatterbrained and terrible at writing can't include everything. If you go in looking for a lesson about quantum physics, you're not going to find it. If you go in looking for some sort of message about the political system in South Africa, you aren't going to find it. Rowling doesn't understand that South Africa exists. Well, at least I assume so, because literally the only person of color in her entire story is named Cho Chang. So, yikes. Despite the fact that Rowling is the archetypal TERF, you aren't going to find any TERF messages in Harry Potter because it just didn't get around to it. You'll find it in her next book, though. The fact that there's not a single LGBTQ plus character in the entire story could be a tip off about her opinions of the world, though not as much as the fact that she queerbaited people by saying Dumbledore was gay outside of the books after he was dead. You know, that should be a red flag that author is not an ally and does not give a shit. But see, all of this is context. All of this is built on not just what's in the story, but what's happening behind the scenes of the story, what's happening after the story with regards to the person who made it. That context matters. That context gives you a better understanding of the work. It gives you a better understanding of the messages in the work, both intentional and unintentional. Also, sometimes erasing that context is kind of like forgetting about history and erasing the experiences of the people who wrote the book. Like, Things Fall Apart is a book about what life was like before colonialism in Africa, kind of, sort of. But it was written by someone who was living through the collapse of colonialism in Africa, kind of, sort of. And, like, that's context that matters. You know, if you go into a book like that and say, oh, the author's intention doesn't matter, kind of just whitewashing history. So yeah, context matters. The messages that were put there intentionally matter. The messages that were put there accidentally matter. And the messages that you read into it that weren't put there don't fucking matter. Get off your high horse. The author isn't dead. Context isn't irrelevant. You don't get to just lazily hack out whatever you want related to whatever you think will be searchable. Get over yourself. I know that might seem a little bit harsh, and some of the people who've talked about Death of the Author aren't trying to do that, but my god, I see it so much. It's so fucking exhausting. Every literary or media critic on the internet thinks that their opinion is the most important thing in the world, and the author doesn't matter, and blah blah blah. I'm like, no, the context does fucking matter. If you're going to talk about a piece of work, talk about what's in the work. Don't talk about what you want to find in the work. It's not relevant. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next life. Laters. Oh, and next time you're reading a book, the first thing you should do is think about what's actually in it. Hey, Endcard here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Like, seriously though, please subscribe. I have like no subscribers. It's sad. If you want to find me on other social media stuff, you can do that at the Golden Stalfos on basically everything. Links to that are in the description, as well as to some charities I like but am obviously not affiliated with. I also have a Patreon if you like me so much that you want to give me money, though obviously only do that if you have money to burn, and if you do have money to burn, they're the charities I mentioned before. They probably need it more than I do. Mad ups to my girlfriend for doing all the editing for these videos. It's a really big help. Oh, and I occasionally stream on Twitch, so follow me there so you don't miss it. I don't have a formal schedule because when I tried to have a formal schedule, I couldn't keep to it, so oh well. Okay, thanks, bye!